Hello and welcome back to the Argyle CIO Leadership Forum, Accelerate, Transform, Innovate 2023. My name is Michael with Argyle. A couple of notes before I turn things over to our panel moderator. First, a quick reminder to stop by our sponsors' virtual booths at any time during today's event and for the following week. Our partners are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience. At any time during today's event, you can visit their virtual booths from the main agenda page, which include complimentary materials, information, and meet and greet opportunities. To ask questions throughout the session, simply type into the Q&A chat, and we will address your questions at the end of the session. And now, without further delay, I'd like to introduce our moderator, Vatsala Sarathy. Vatsala is a leader with many talents. She manages technology, finance, and operations at the Graduate School of Business at Stanford University. She's also an ICF credential coach, and in her spare time, she is trying her hands on an Indian drum instrument called the tabla. We're excited to have Vatsala and our panelists with us for a panel discussion titled Enterprise Advantage, Intelligent AI, ML, and Automation. Vatsala, thank you so much for being here. It's a pleasure to have you with us again. Welcome, and over to you.
Thank you, Michael, for the wonderful introduction and for kicking off this session. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this session on AI, ML, and intelligent automation. I'm very excited to be with you all today. This is a topic that's top of mind for everyone in the workforce today, irrespective of role, industry, or size of the organization. We will talk about what intelligence and learning means in the context of processes and machines and how it might apply to each of us in our own industry, as well as collectively for organizations and the society. We are extremely lucky to have two brilliant technologists who are also eminent leaders in their fields. I'm very confident we'll see a fascinating exchange of ideas, and I'm truly honored to be moderating this panel today. So let's start with a quick round of introductions. We have two panelists today, GS Jha and Sagar Samtani. GS, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
GS Jha, I am a global CIO and Chief Information Security Officer for a medical device company called Accuray Inc. We are headquartered in Sunnyvale, California, but we have offices, many offices in US as well as around the globe. We are a global publicly traded company. I have been in life science, biotech, mostly in medical device and diagnostic for over 20 years now. So I'm looking forward to share with you how the topics that Vatsala mentioned are being used, at least in the companies that I have worked for. And then also in the past, I have worked for software companies, services companies like Anderson, Oracle, Sun Microsystems, and now I'm back in the industry. So hoping to share that 360-degree around the views that I have experienced.
Thank you, GS. It is no secret that the pandemic has accelerated the use of AI and machine learning, especially in areas such as drug research, discovery, communication, and delivery. But I'm very excited to see the work done in your area of medical devices as well. So thank you. Next, I would like to introduce to you Sagar Samtani. Sagar, welcome to the panel discussion today. It's truly lovely to talk to another person who works at a premier business school. Tell us about your research and yourself and your research that you and your colleagues are doing.
Thanks, Vatsala. I appreciate the introduction there. I appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this panel as well. Looking forward to a lively and interesting discussion here. So my name is Sagar Samtani. I'm an assistant professor at the Kelley School of Business at Indiana University. I am currently running a research lab here in the Operations and Decision Technologies Department that's focused in on doing applied artificial intelligence and machine learning for different application areas, namely in cybersecurity, and also in other areas such as mental health informatics and business intelligence as well, specifically looking at different industries such as the chips industry in particular. So the research lab that I direct has about a dozen students and research scientists in it that are all focused on doing different areas of research and developing AI and machine learning techniques to automate a lot of tasks that we typically see within those other application areas that I'd mentioned there. I'm looking forward to talking a bit about my experiences in those realms here soon.
Thank you, Sagar. I can't wait to hear more stories and examples of the frameworks you're creating. I'm very curious about some of the critical issues that you're tackling around mental health and cybersecurity, for example. GS and Sagar, both your experiences are very fascinating, and I can't wait to hear more. So let's dive in. For our audience, as we discuss these topics, please feel free to put in your questions and comments in the chat box, and we'll try and address some of them towards the end of this session. With that, let's get started. My first question is around the definition of these terms. So GS, can you talk about the terms AI and ML? What do they mean in the context of your industry and enterprise?
Yeah, no, thank you, Vatsala. It's good to have a good foundational agreement on these terms, because they are being used everywhere depending upon the context and all that. So let's set the stage with that. So the team, for the audience, let's talk about AI and ML to make sure that we have a good clarification on that. You know, when you think of AI, artificial intelligence, and machine learning, most of the time these terms are used interchangeably. But know that machine learning is a subset of a broader category of artificial intelligence. It's a much broader and all that. So the way I look at it, the machine learning is a pathway to the artificial intelligence, right? They are not one and the same. The subcategory of AI uses algorithms to automatically learn insights and recognizes patterns from the data, applying that learning to make increasingly better decisions. So that's how I look at AI and the machine learning. You can apply the same thing with the deep learning as well. They're all part of overall artificial intelligence, the framework. One of the things that I have always think that things have advanced so much in the last 5-7 years, whether it is edge computing and all that. I think the name artificial intelligence should be changed to real intelligence pretty soon, because it's no longer artificial, it's becoming real and real as the times have been progressing, right? So talking about, I think the next thing, Vatsala, was the intelligent automation, right? So
yeah.
So I want to provide some context before I define how I see intelligent automation. So most of our audience here, they are practitioners in the same age group. So I'll take you a little bit in late 80s, early 90s, when the first ERP software came about, whether it was a SAP or BAN. At that time, we were really at the infant stage of automating processes, right?
Yeah.
We bought the software, we changed the software to fit our processes, right? As a result, you saw we all experienced over budget, overrun project, sidetrack, not so successful project. But as things have progressed, it continued through early, say, 2000. But since then, the software advancements and process advancements, people started to use best practices out of the box, right? Fit to standard. So the concept was, rather than changing the software, why don't we change our process to fit the software so you get the best practice? So those were traditional business process automation. So as the advancement over last 2.5 decades, introduction of AI, machine learning, and all that, now we are at a stage where it's not just a simple old plain vanilla automation, it's an intelligent automation. So what does that mean? It's a cognitive automation. You know, it can make decisions, it can react to things, it can provide, which I'll talk about in a moment. So the intelligent automation has 3 major components, right? Very different from our traditional automation. The first component is artificial intelligence. The second one is business process management, BPM, that we know. And the RPA, robotic process automation. As you can see from my graphics background, we use a lot of robots in our line of business as well. And they all 3 together to streamline and scale the decision-making process across organization, right? So in nutshell, intelligence Intelligent automation simplifies processes, frees up resources, and improves your operational efficiencies using variety of applications that your organizations and my organization depend on. So that's how I look at those three terms of Vatsala broadly.
Yeah, excellent explanation of these terms. I really like how you took artificial intelligence and moved it towards real intelligence, and also fitting our processes and changing them according to the software. That's a very interesting way of looking at it. And I also just want to point out that robotic process automation does not mean robots only. It can be software bots as well.
Yep.
So just wanted
Hardware,
to
software, yep.
yeah. So Sagar, when does it make sense for an organization to start thinking about frameworks when they start off building these systems?
Yeah, I think Vatsala, just to clarify, you mean like AI-oriented frameworks and adoption of AI and so on for organizations, right? Yeah. So I think one of the key areas to consider is what is the data that is being generated within the organization or that the organization typically has to consume. So if we take the context of cybersecurity, for instance, which is the area that I primarily worked on throughout my career, many organizations, there are security operations centers that there's a lot of data that's being generated within those, whether it be NetFlow data, malware data that they're collecting, different event logs, and so on. And so that data is starting to have a lot of it's starting to overwhelm a lot of the security analysts and human analysts there. So this is an area where AI can really be very ripe and very valuable in that particular space. If we consider context like business intelligence in terms of trying to make better pricing decisions based off of market dynamics, being able to synthesize multiple sources of data simultaneously is really something that AI excels at, but something that's very time consuming for a human to do. So if we think about social media data, news data, and then different types of internal indicators that may be coming from pricing division and others, those will all be different types of signals or things that you need to be synthesized together by a human. This is where AI can really play a significant role, is to help synthesize a lot of these disparate data sources and cut through a lot of the volume more effectively than what a human would be able to do. So to answer your question directly, I think it's when the organization's at a stage where they're starting to feel overwhelmed with the quantity, not just the quantity, but the different types of data sources as well, as where AI can come into play and be a valuable tool or boost in that particular area.
Yeah, that makes total sense. There was a very interesting question that just came up, which is also on my mind. So let's dive into that. The question is, can you provide examples of measuring metrics that best align with the organization's vision as we are building these complex systems? Sagar?
Yeah, I'll take security again as an example here. So being able to measure certain types of metrics, so being able to measure things such as vulnerabilities, how many vulnerabilities exist within an organization before the introduction of an AI-enabled system versus after, as an instance, or looking at the organizational risk from that perspective in terms of the number of assets, the severity of the vulnerabilities, and quantifying those before and after the introduction of an AI-enabled system. We take a very specific example within the vulnerability management space. If we take, for example, automated patching or automated remediation, where you're trying to fix vulnerabilities. Not many, but some organizations are taking an AI-enabled approach to recommend vulnerability remediations or patches, or automatically do some of those on their side. And so you can measure the metrics. Simple metric would be how many were in there before and after, and how many remained after you've done this for a few cycles. So those would be some examples that I can provide from the security space in terms of metrics that would help align the AI-enabled algorithms, the vision of better security posture, and so on.
Yeah. GS, as you know, data comes in many forms. There are structured data, unstructured data, external, internal data, qualitative, quantitative, ethnographic data. How do you build a unified vision and strategy around data And how do you build, when do you think about building a metadata system or a data dictionary so that your systems can continuously leverage all the different sources and become more, use all these different sources of data to become more intelligent?
Yeah, no, thank you. That's a very good question because, you know, the AI, ML, and intelligent automation is all around the data, right? And these days we have more data than we ever had, whether it's business related or in personal life. So team, in any organization like ours, you will have many sources of data, distributors, customers, consumers, your own internal employee data and all that. Some of them are structured like RDBMS and some of them are not, right? So, but the good news is there has been so much advancements in technologies using AWS or Google or Microsoft Azure, where you can really channel this data through those platforms to create a holistic data lake, right? So of course, the traditional ETL and EAI platforms are very useful, but creating the concept of data lake where you harmonize and synthesize all the unstructured, structured data using some of the machine learning techniques that we talked about to put together in a way and create metadata so that the consumer of the data, which are your business analysts, executive team, or operational leaders, that they get to see that the data in a dashboard manner.
Yeah.
So that regardless of the source, regardless of what ETL processes and harmonization process it went through, that they are able to see the actionable data just by clicking and doing some drill down. So the data lake is the concept that I would use to marry unstructured, structured data in a way around metadata and context to, you know, maximize the value.
Yeah, that's great. There's another question that just came in that also talks about, you know, building these systems from scratch. And so GS, maybe you can, since you have so much experience building these robotics systems, how did you start off and what was your path going from a place where these systems were not there to a place where, you know, your background just tells us how much of automation has happened in the last, I don't know how many years, 20 years or so. So what was your path in moving your organization? What were some of the challenges you faced along the way?
Yeah, so a couple of things, right? I will start with cultural change and journey that needs to happen when you introduce some of the core innovations, especially using AI, machine learning, deep learning. The reason is, like, you know, we all are human. When there is a change, there's always a speculation, there's always fear, there's change. So you have to make sure that when you start to introduce anything that is going to be a game changer or going to have a significant change, first thing that is important is to get hold of your culture. How does it impact your culture? What does it mean? Does it change the culture in a way that advances your people towards achieving your mission? And if that is not aligned, then that's something you want to spend as much as time possible to get it right. Of course, it's a subjective. You will never know it's 100% in the right direction, but that alignment early on is very important. Right? That's what I have learned. Number one. Number two, don't reinvent the wheel. These days, there are so many things you can buy already available by doing some research, reaching out to vendors, except your core innovation. So in our line of business, in the radiation therapy, basically two things that are core that we have to do ourselves because nobody else does it. So those two are one, imaging. You know, so basically we treat cancer patients live while they are on the bed, and our imaging system in the real time tracks the movement of bad cells, and it decides the radiation dose, the direction of dose with minimum resistance to any other healthy cells. So those are the things we have to do. But the surrounding infrastructure, we have two choices. Either we can develop ourselves or buy from multiple vendors who are good at doing this. So it's basically developing that strategy, buy versus build, and what's your core competency? What do we want to be, known for? That's the approach I would take. Don't build everything from scratch yourself. There is a lot of tools available, and which in this conference you might have already met many of those vendors that you can talk to, share your ideas, look at what they can help with. That's how I started. Culture, then looking at the task strategy we have ahead of us, and dividing and conquering what we need to build through our R&D, brain power, and what we can buy from outside.
Yeah, I like that, because sometimes when you feel like you want to build everything, your focus is spread across so many different priorities. But thinking about what is the core strength of your organization and how do I keep that internally and then leverage what's available to build things around it. I think that's a very smart strategy. Thank you for sharing that. Sagar, do you have anything more to add?
No, I think that was a very comprehensive answer. Let me go back to the initial question that you had about the metadata part. I find that part to be very, very important, actually. So before getting into any algorithm development for any research project that we do in our lab, what I force the students to do, and they sometimes hate me for it, is that they are required to actually have data dictionaries in terms of what are the different fields of data that we have access to. What do those fields of data actually mean? What are some examples? How populated are they? And so on. And that gives us the ability to more effectively select the appropriate set of AI algorithms that we want to tweak based off of the type of task that we're trying to execute. So I always view it in terms of AI algorithm development as a confluence of data, task, and requirement. The data being the most important part. So the data being what is the actual raw materials that you're working with, and in order to know that, you need to know the metadata, how populated it is, and so on. The task, is it predictive, descriptive? Is it, what are the characteristics there of the task that you're trying to execute? And then the requirements from the business domain: interpretability, explainability, bias, fairness, ethics, those types of things. How do you retain those in the model development process? And usually by taking those three as and considering the confluence of that, what you're able to do is you're able to develop AI algorithms more effectively, because you have a better understanding of, number one, the most important thing being the data, and then how to operationalize that data into an algorithm based off of a particular context that you're operating in. So I think back to your initial point, the metadata part, starting point for so many of our projects in terms of what we can and can't do from an algorithm side. Yeah,
I usually find that, sometimes companies use metadata, start thinking about metadata as an afterthought, and it just won't work, especially in complex systems where you're building these complex algorithms, and you also have to worry about, data privacy, security, you have to worry about, fairness, and so on. So I think having that data dictionary is critical, but also it builds a common understanding amongst different functions of the organization and different levels of the organization, from the leadership on to, the rest of the staff. So thank you for that. GS, one other thought that came into my mind when you were talking about culture is, did you actually involve the entire workforce in co-creating these solutions, or did you have a small task force as you were starting to build these systems? Do you think it's the IT organization that should manage it, or should it be a collaborative process?
Yeah, no, that's an excellent question, and I can draw upon recent digital transformation that I have been leading across the globe, using SAP S/4HANA. So I think Vatsala, you talked about the collaboration, IT leading versus the business side leading. I would say it's a cross-functional, right? And whenever you talk about cross-functional, making sure the alignment is the first thing. So basically what I did, rather than boiling the ocean, we basically picked up the core team, right, from each stakeholder, major stakeholder teams, to put together a core foundation that we could then expand it to the extended group, and then there will be the rest of the organization. So basically I took a 3-layer approach, started with the core team, then the extended team, followed by the enterprise. So what it allowed us to do that with the smaller team, with the core team, it allowed us to build the bridges across all the stakeholders and organization to set the stage, followed by it really helped us drive the message. And basically, all the core team members become ambassador. Now,
Yes.
as far as leading it's never one person's job. You will have a couple of people in the PMO group. It's not
Yeah.
just one person, couple of PMO person, one from each 4 functions who will be impacted most. And then pick somebody who in a lead PMO role, regardless of the department they come from. I look for the qualities such as in that person, ability to influence, ability to communicate and bring people together. So you need somebody who can be either from IT or can be from finance or ops. It really doesn't matter, but you need that quality, the person who's good at influencing, has good credibility within the organization, and let that person drive that core team along with the extended team to drive the initiatives. That's how we started. But having said that, I would caution that you can never prepare enough, right? I call it, if you don't prepare to succeed, you're preparing to fail. So prepare. Don't have a false start. With the excitement and all that, getting things done sooner. There is a push that let's kick off the project. My first thing is always have a checklist.
Yeah.
Did we do all these things? Did we meet all the prerequisites before taking off the project? If not, extend your prepare phase, because if you don't do that well, you will struggle during the execution. I'll give an example. When we started this SAP S/4HANA transformation, I had 4 months of prepare phase. At the end of 4th month, we realized that there were a few areas we were not 100% ready. Data migration was one of them. We extended the prepare phase by another 3 months. As a result, it's paying off a lot of benefits.
Yeah, this is great. The 2 things I'm taking away from what you said were having ambassadors and a cross-functional team to start with, and then breaking it down into core team, extended team, and enterprise team. I think that's brilliant. And then what you just said about the importance of preparedness. I think it's not only for the success of the project itself, but it's also when people see that you're preparing so much, they have more faith in what you're doing, and it's more likely that it'll be more successful with less pitfalls.
So Vatsala, one thing that I would also add, I look at these opportunities, whether it is a small project or big project, is that if you, for all those projects, it's a good opportunity to build your leadership bench within the company.
Yeah.
You started with team 1.0 before the project. You want to make sure that at the end of the project, not only you got the benefit from the BPM, the intelligent automation and such, but make sure that your team graduated from being 1.0 to at least 2.0. So now you have a better leader in the future. They can go ahead and lead even more complex project.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that you can do culturally, employment, employee empowerment, their professional development, and so on.
Yeah. It also actually speaks very directly to one of the questions that just came in about overcoming employee resistance to AI and other technologies. And I think by involving these people from the very beginning and helping them grow is one way of making them excited about the transformation. So thank you for sharing that. Let's go into a little bit about ethics and biases in these systems. Sagar, as we start using AI and ML more and more in both our internal and external processes, how should we be thinking about biases? And how can we avoid biases in our algorithms, in our processes, as well as in our decision making? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's a very, very, very deep question with a lot of different dimensions to it as well. I'll go ahead and go from the angle that I'm most familiar with, which is going to be the more data-centric angle. So I'm one of these people that believes in data centricity being essential to AI development, modern AI developments. If we think about modern AI development as what GS had mentioned earlier, we're using AI and ML interchangeably with each other right now, but really ML is a subset of artificial intelligence, and within machine learning, where a lot of the AI innovations are happening are specifically within a space called deep learning. So deep learning based models are often the core of innovations such as ChatGPT and some of these other generative AI that we're seeing today. So just kind of to delineate between a few terms here, but part of the reason why I'm bringing that up is because the deep learning models are often very data hungry in nature. So feeding in large quantities of data is something that is important for a lot of AI models. I will argue that some AI models or some deep learning models, you don't need to have a lot of data to still operationalize it well. But the reason why I bring that up is because I think that there's often a move fast and break things kind of mentality with getting data, just gathering as much data as we can without getting an idea about where the data is coming from, the provenance of the data, the characteristics of the data, the metadata of what's in there as well. Asking ourselves the hard questions of should we collect this data and is there any biases within the data that we can test for? And there's open source packages out there that will allow you to test for biases in data sets in particular. So I think that is often the starting point that I would suggest to consider is looking at the biases that may exist within data. This often comes up in demographic related data in particular. So if you have issues of demographics in particular regions of the country, right, that is going to propagate down to the model level and then beyond as well. And of course, there's a lot of bias studies that are happening within the models, the algorithms themselves, that can be considered too. So is the model leaning one way or another based off the training data? But I'll also talk about the decision-making processes as well. I think that if we take a model like ChatGPT, for instance, right, how much is that actually biasing our perspectives in terms of what should be done and what should not be done as well? So I think from that perspective, the bias aspect is important for decision makers to consider in terms of are they over relying on these particular types of tools or approaches. Just as not as an aside, but as a continuation of this thought here, these generative models are very good for being able to produce boilerplate content or be able to automate a lot of the boring things very effectively. But in terms of completely replacing a human and being able to come up with those judgments that may be more unbiased in nature, that a human may be able to more judiciously come up with, that's where a lot of these models are going to start to falter and start to break down a bit as well too.
Yeah. So I hear that, thinking about data and thinking about biases across all of these areas, just not just the training data, not just the algorithms, but what are the processes doing and what kind of decisions are being made based on this is important. GS, how does this change the role and responsibility of a CIO or a CISO? The bias question.
Yeah, it's a huge, and it continues to evolve. I think Sagar touched it on very, very well, that you will have so many sources of the data, right? And how do you really look at what do they mean? And as they go through this AI models, and the key is training data and test data, right? Any model, whether it is an AI model or human model, they do what you train them on, right? So the training data, test data are very, very critical. And you as a CIO or the IT leaders, you really need to know those sources very, very well, right? And make sure that you provide the weightage on those sources appropriately is to get as unbiased possible a model as well as output of that model. So Sagar said, it's still far away from replacing human intelligence, right? It's very good for menial job, process automations and all that. But when it comes to highest level of decision making, this is just an aid to the executive leaders and managers. Don't just blindly depend on what's being produced by these models and go do something. Take that as an input, use your experience, the context, the culture that you're part of, and then decide the next steps based on that.
Yeah, I think over-reliance on any of these tools is going to cause issues. And I think as a CIO or as a leader, we have to constantly be aware of that and also constantly question what we are doing. It's not a one-time thing. You know, when you start, you look at all of these things and then you stop looking at them. It's not going to work because things change. And so thank you for that.
But one thing I would add, you know, the team, many of you attending this conference are the leaders. You do a lot of purchase and all that for your enterprise. And these days, every single vendor you talk to, they throw AI, ML, deep learning in all their software, left and right. Make sure that you ask them, you know, what kind of model they have been using. What's the p-value and probabilities and all that. Make sure you ask some deep questions. Because these words are everywhere, and that will give you also some insight into as to what they are telling and how does it apply in your context and what it means to bias or ethics in your organization.
Yeah. How do you think about what might happen when these machines fail? Who will take the brunt of the responsibility, whether it's moral responsibility or legal responsibilities? Who will take the fall? Will it be the humans? Of course, it can be the machines. And of course, humans are the ones who are building them and running them and monitoring them. So how do you think about these areas and how do you prepare for, you know, any malfunction of either the entire system or parts of the system? GS?
Yeah. So, you know, at the end of every system, there is a human attached, whether somebody is operating it or somebody inputting the data or somebody reaping the benefit. So basically, these systems is all designed to aid and help the human, and it revolves around human. So at the end of the day, as a human, we are responsible for this, right? Now, coming back to whether it is malfunctioning or failure and all that, it's still, you know, so depends on who's owning the system, right? For the most part, system owners are CIO or CTO along with key stakeholders. So the first line of responsibility, you know, for good care of these systems, make sure that they are proper care and maintenance and all that is in the hand of CIO. So that's the primary accountability right there, like it has been, you know, for years. So no change there. Now, the second, you know, from there, you know, make sure that you have the right team in place to triage and you have some systems in place for risk management and the backup and all that you're very, very familiar with the traditional IT processes and systems.
Sagar?
Yeah, I don't have too much more to add on to what GS said there. The only thing I'll say is that if we look at the life cycle in terms of the AI model development to actual adoption, there's different ways of kind of considering the root cause of where the model may have actually failed or that may have led to its failure. So what I mean by that is that a lot of these models that are being implemented into these AI systems today that are in enterprise organizations were actually open source models that were just import scikit-learn and then go ahead and run, or import Keras, import PyTorch, and pull a GitHub package and so on. So where does the blame actually lie from that perspective? Does it lie back to with the original developer who's just a researcher trying to get a paper published? Or does it go to the people that are actually importing in those packages? Or does it go to the people that are actually using it as well? I don't have a clear answer for that particular part. But I think that there's also things in terms of the upstream of where the models and so on came from that are important to consider, as well as to where the blame would reside if we were to get assigned any. Yeah.
And in addition to just, you know, figuring out what happened, we also need to put, like GS was mentioning, systems in place to take over when these mission critical systems are failing. And so thinking about, how can we bring back the humans to do certain things if the machines fail is something that we have to also think about. There are a couple of questions that we have to address, but before that, let me ask both of you this one question. What's next in artificial intelligence, machine learning, and automation that you think will have the biggest impact on our lives in society?
So I can
Okay,
go.
GS.
Yeah.
GS,
So
go first.
For team, I think it's no surprise that artificial intelligence and machine learning are becoming a dominating part of tech industry and in industry in general, whether it is our daily lives, IoTs and all that. I think combination of all that is going to lead, which I call hyper automation, right?
Yeah.
So right now we are at intelligent automation, and we're transitioning with the advancement into hyper automation, where the AI, data science, and machine learning will continue to play a major critical role, right?
Yep. Sagar?
Yeah, I'll give a somewhat unpopular answer here and more non-technical in response as well. It can be summed up in 2 words: expectation management. I think is really what's going to happen over the next 5 years here. I still don't believe that a Terminator-like being is coming. I don't believe that AI is going to replace all of our jobs. Maybe I'm a little bit negative on it, but working with AI a lot on a day-to-day basis and in research context, I know where it fails, I know where it does well in as well. But I also am working with large organizations and international companies as well that are looking to adopt AI-enabled analytics and systems into their environments. And one of the big things that we often have to see is the management of expectations. Sometimes they just refer to AI as a machine that will just do their job for them. And I have to talk them off very quickly that's just not going to happen. Whereas there's on the other end of the spectrum, you have people that are complete non-believers in AI that say, I can do the job better than what AI can. Of course you can, because you're doing it on a day-over-day basis, and you're going to have 100% accuracy if you know exactly what you're looking for on a finite set of data. But when you expand that out to larger scales of data, then are you going to be able to maintain that same level of efficiency and productivity? And are you willing to drop down to 90% accuracy and so on? So I think the number one thing is expectation management in terms of the AI-enabled analytics technologies. Where are we at? And the reason why I bring that up is because AI, if you look over its history over the last 50 to 70 years, has always gone through these ups and downs for a variety of reasons. There's been AI winters that have happened, sometimes due to computational resources, sometimes the math isn't there yet, and so on. But I think that that's something that we should keep an eye out for moving forward, is how do we avoid an AI winter? And I think that comes from expectation management.
Thank you. Yeah. One last question. We have only 2 minutes left. What skill sets are recommended for people who want to get into AI and machine learning? GS?
So depends on, do you want to be a recipient of AI, what it does, or you want to be the one who creates AI models, right? So the two, right? I'm going to focus on somebody who's developing AI models, like machine learning models. The basic skills is, critical thinking, right? And programming. You've got to know some programming language. There are several that you can pick, whichever you're comfortable with, and critical thinking, right? The more you apply critical thinking upfront, the better models you will build. Look, AI is all about the quality of models you build, and that's directly proportional based on the training data that you have, the test data that you have from multiple sources, like we talked about the bias, the malfunctioning, accuracy, and all that. So critical thinking and having a good grasp of a programming language to apply to a model.
Great, thank you. This was such an excellent and vibrant discussion on a very topical subject that's crucial to every business, more so today than ever. So I'm so grateful to both of you, GS and Sagar, for your insights, and to our audience for such great questions. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and over to you, Michael.
Thank you, Vatsala, GS, and Sagar for such an insightful panel discussion. I also want to thank everyone else for joining us today. Now, this session, along with all of today's content, will be available on demand following the event. Vatsala and panel, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.